Now, the foreign ministers of Quad members met in Australia today as China and Russia are growing increasingly close ahead of a potential invasion of Ukraine. In a thinly veiled swipe at China's growing economic and military expansion, the United States, Australia, Japan, and India pledged to deepen cooperation to ensure the Indo-Pacific region was free from coercion. Despite being outside the group's scope, the escalating crisis between the West and Russia over Ukraine was a top item on the agenda. Now, the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, cast Moscow's buildup as a challenge to the international rules-based order, which Quad would work to preserve.
Diplomacy and dialogue. We would strongly prefer to resolve the differences that we have through diplomacy, through dialogue. That is the responsible way to do things. We've made every possible effort to engage Russia, to look at the concerns that it's raised, to share concerns that we have, that European partners and allies have, to see if we can't find ways to advance collective security on a reciprocal basis. But at the same time, we've been very clear in building deterrence and building defense, and making it clear to Russia that if it chooses the path of renewed aggression, it will face massive consequences.
While the Quad has traditionally been focused on standing up to a rising and more aggressive China, there is growing concern among the four countries that China and Russia are presenting a united front. When asked about the Ukraine crisis, India's Foreign Minister, Dr. S. Shankar, said this.
This meeting is focused on the Indo-Pacific, so I think you should figure out the geography there. And where we stand, our position on Ukraine, we have laid it out in public at the UN Security Council.
The Prime Minister of Australia attended the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting in Melbourne. Scott Morrison said that the four countries were facing a very fragile, fragmented and contested world, and that it is no more accentuated than here in our Indo-Pacific. But he was reassured to be meeting with like-minded Quad partners.
We live in a very fragile, fragmented and contested world, and that is no more accentuated than here in our Indo-Pacific. And the like-minded partners that we see gathered together in this Quad, I always find so incredibly reassuring. I'm reassured by our perspective. I'm reassured by the understanding that is shared between each of us. I'm reassured by the incredible strong support that Australia has received by our Quad partners.
In an exclusive conversation with WION's principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibbal, Australia's envoy stressed on the importance of India in bringing stability to the region and the significance of New Delhi's role in this effort amid the geopolitical uncertainty. Listen in.
With me is the Australian envoy to Delhi. So welcome to WION. Today is a dramatic day in many senses, from Canberra to Delhi. Trade talks here, Quad foreign ministers meeting in your country. How do you see the Quad foreign ministers meeting, the outcomes today in terms of the in-person meeting just ahead of the summit that is going to take place in Japan?
Well, an incredibly important meeting, demonstrated so by the personal presence of foreign ministers from the four countries, talking again about the needs to maintain a rules-based order within our region. And that fits nicely with what we've been doing in Delhi, where both the Indian government and the Australian governments are trying to prioritise economic growth to make their country strong at a time of geopolitical uncertainty.
Can we see more high-level engagement in terms of in-person meetings from Australia to India, or perhaps from India to Australia? There were talks of your Prime Minister perhaps coming to India this year.
Well, what we've seen with the Quad meeting today is a return to the normal of in-person meetings. We've seen trade negotiators from Australia here all week. We've seen our trade minister meeting face-to-face with your commerce minister. We'll see ministers going to Australia over the next couple of months. This will be a return to normal.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.